Hi guys, welcome back to Dimitra's Dishes. So today I'm going to teach you how to make our famous black and white cake. We sell so many of these at the restaurant in our cafe, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to make it. Last week I taught you how to make the really moist chocolate cake layers, and I have those sitting on the counter defrosting. We're going to begin by making our buttercream, but in our buttercream, I make my vanilla buttercream with pastry cream. So I'm going to show you how to make my pastry cream. I've made it so many times. This is pretty much that same recipe without the butter in it, because we're going to have a lot of butter in the buttercream, so I just left it out. So I have some milk heating up in the saucepan. I'm going to add to it a little bit of salt, and then we're going to need some pure vanilla extract, a little bit of sugar. I have some egg yolks and cornstarch, and heavy whipping cream. I'm going to mix these things together just until they become a nice pale yellow, and in that time the milk should have warmed up. You want it to come to a boil, or almost to a boil, and then we're going to use that milk to temper these eggs, which really just means that we're going to raise their temperature. So when we add them to our milk, they'll be nice and creamy. And then we're going to add this all in the saucepan, bring it up to a boil, and let it cook until it thickens. Then we're just going to add 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, whisk it until it's nice and smooth. Then I'm just going to transfer it into my bowl. You want it to be really nice and thick. I'm going to transfer it into my bowl, cover it with plastic wrap, and let it cool to room temperature. Okay, so part 2 of this recipe is making the ganache, and our cream that I have here on the side has come to a boil. Ganache is basically just 2 ingredients, unless you want to add anything else to flavor it up or add another level of flavor to it. It's just heavy whipping cream and chocolate. I have in my bowl semi-sweet chocolate. You could do semi-sweet and dark or all dark. It's completely up to you. So once you pour the very, very hot boiling cream over it, you begin mixing, and before you know it, it'll be super, super smooth and shiny. So one final ingredient when making ganache, if you're using it to pour it on top of a cake, you want it to be ultra smooth and shiny. So I like to add some vegetable oil to it, just a little bit, maybe like about a tablespoon or so, and you just whisk it in and set it aside, and then you're good to go. Okay, so for our vanilla buttercream, we're going to need a batch of our vanilla pastry cream that we made, a pound of unsalted butter, and then we need some confectioner sugar or powdered sugar. We need some pure vanilla extract and a little bit of salt. So a few tips before we begin. First of all, the butter needs to be at room temperature and really nice and soft. If it's hard, you're not going to get a smooth buttercream. So either take it out a few hours ahead of time or put it in the microwave for a few seconds at a time. Make sure you don't melt it, because melted butter doesn't work either. So it just has to be really nice and soft, and then it'll beat and incorporate really smooth and make a really smooth and fluffy buttercream. Second thing, when you make the pastry cream for this recipe, this requires a very thick cream, and it's thick when it's hot, and when pastry cream cools, it gets even thicker. So you want to put it in your stand mixer if you're using a stand mixer, or you can, if you're doing it by hand, you can definitely do this with a hand mixer. You could do that too, but just break it up and smooth it out and beat it for just a few minutes until it's really nice and smooth. That's it. You want it to just get really, really nice and smooth. If it's super thick and it's really not breaking up, what you can do is you can lighten it up with a little bit, maybe about 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. You could just pour that in there and it'll thin it out a bit. So you can totally make the pastry cream a day ahead of time, even two days ahead of time, just to make things go like much faster. And what you want to do, just to warm it up, either pop it in the microwave so it can come to room temperature, or you leave it out for about an hour, or you could sit it in a bowl of just warm water until it comes to the same temperature as the butter, because when you're adding anything to butter that's cold, it's going to harden the butter and make it kind of clumpy. So those are really the only tips you need. So now it's time to make the buttercream. To our mixing bowl, I've added all my butter, and I'm just going to put a little bit of salt, because salt brings out the sweetness and everything, just a little bit. I'm going to lock it and turn it on low speed, and then beat it on really high for a couple of seconds until it becomes fluffy. Once the butter is all broken up, we're just going to add our powdered sugar, and I'm just going to add maybe a quarter of it at a time, just so that way it doesn't fly up in our face. And then 2 generous teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. And then we're going to increase the speed to high until it becomes really nice and fluffy, and let it beat. So after about a minute or so, it's going to be really nice and fluffy and air is going to be incorporated into it. Just go in and scrape down the sides, and then we're just going to put in about half of our room temperature pastry cream. We're going to beat that in. Once that's beaten, we're going to add the rest, and then we're going to let it go again for a couple of minutes until it's all nice and fluffy. So this is what you want to see. You want it to be really thick and nice and fluffy and smooth. I'm just going to transfer this into my bowl, and then we're going to start making our cake. This is the star of the show. This buttercream right here is not too sweet. It's not very sugary, like kind of like the typical American buttercreams. Very light. It's almost like a French buttercream. It's the closest thing to a French buttercream that you're going to get without having to mess with thermometers and raw eggs and making the syrup at the right temperature. That's kind of tedious. So for a beginner, or really for an expert cake decorator, this recipe is my go-to recipe, and it is super delicious. Give it a try. Now you're going to need a few things. You're going to need once you start decorating cakes, there are just some things that you just should have on hand. These pastry bags are reusable. You can see mine is kind of beat up because I've used it a whole lot. The star tip is probably one of my favorite tips to use. So I'll put the links to all of these on my website and in the description box down below. Then if you wanted to make life much easier, you should get yourself a little turntable. They're very inexpensive and they make cake decorating super, super easy. And then another thing that's really nice to have are these cake boards. I buy mine from our supplier, and we get them in bulk, but they do sell these online and they do sell them at craft shops. So if you can't find it, I'll put it in the link down below where you can find them online and get them. And you could get a plain one, a gold one. They have all types of fancy ones. I'm going to use my gold one today. And it's really good because it's easy. Once you're done decorating the cake, first of all, if you get the gold one, it cleans off. The buttercream can just be wiped off if there's any on here. But then it's really easy to transfer it onto a cake platter, or even to put it in a cake box and give it to someone as a gift or bring it to their house. Now, these cake layers that we made are on the thicker side. You can even just take this layer cake if you don't feel comfortable with slicing cakes, and just put it on here and then put the buttercream as we're going to do and just stack them up. But I will also show you how easy it is to tort the cakes, which really just means slice it in half. And these long serrated knives are really helpful in doing so. Let me show you how I do it. So European cakes are generally very, very thinly sliced. They're thin layers, and American cakes are more on the thicker side. So you just take your knife, and I started way earlier than I should have, but you put it towards you'd find the center of the cake, and then you go all around while turning. You don't saw through the cake. It slices through very, very easily and releases just like that. So now before you start working, you can just dust all of the crumbs, or as much as you can, off of your cake board. Next, what we're going to do, just to make icing very easy, is we're going to fill our bag, and I put the bag with the star tip attached in a tall glass, a drinking glass, so that way it supports it and it'll be very easy to fill. And you never want to fill it way to the top, just up halfway is more than enough. That way the bag is very easy to handle. You pull it up, you twist it, and then you hold it like you would a tennis ball. And then we're going to go all around the border and make a ring of buttercream. And then we're going to take some of our ganache that we've already made earlier, and we're just going to put about 2 tablespoons on our layer. And then I have 2 spatulas. I have this very small one that you can use to just spread the ganache evenly onto the cake. And the big one is going to be later on used for icing the outside of the cake, and it makes it really easy to ice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the rest of the buttercream that's in my bag, and I'm just going to keep creating rings of buttercream, just like that. And if it needs a little more, you don't have to go ahead and fill the bag up just for that. Just put a little bit in there. And you don't even have to spread it out. Then you can take another layer, put it on top, and continue doing the same thing. Create a ring, put some ganache, and then fill it with the buttercream, and then you're going to put the final layer on top of that. And don't worry at all if the cake cracks or anything like that. It's going to be completely fine. Once we put the buttercream on it, you won't even be able to see it. So now at this point, you see how we have a lot of crumbs laying around? We're going to make what's known as a crumb coat. And we're just going to take a little bit of buttercream, and this buttercream is going to get a little bit dirty. So you just want to use just a little bit because we're going to make a crumb coat. And we're going to put it all around the cake to kind of seal in those crumbs. Once it's iced all over and the crumbs are sealed in, you want to take your cake and put it in the freezer or in the refrigerator so it can set about 30 minutes. Okay, so once the cake sits in the freezer for about 20-30 minutes, it sets, and then once you put the rest of the buttercream on there, none of the crumbs will get into it, and you won't even be able to see not even the little slightest crumb in it. So I like to start by putting as much buttercream as I can on the top, and then I just let it go down one side as much as I can, and I just keep pushing it. I'm going to take some more and bring it to the other side with my spatula. And I just keep going until it's all covered in buttercream. So now I'm just going to take one more round with my spatula just to give it that smooth finish. And we're not going for perfect. This is homemade, so I'm just teaching you just this basic way how to do it. The more practice you have with the spatula, the better you'll get. But we're just smoothing it out just like that. And at this point, I'm just going to pop this in the freezer for another 10 minutes. Because we're going to pour ganache over the top to get that beautiful shiny chocolate top with some drip on the side. But before I do that, I'm just going to clean it up. I have a wet towel, and I'm just going to go all around and clean it up so that way this buttercream doesn't set in the freezer and keep it looking like kind of dirty. Okay, so I put the rest of my buttercream into this pastry bag just so we could use for decorating, and I popped my chocolate ganache because it was really too thick to pour into the microwave for 10-second increments until it got to this consistency. And you want to make sure at this point that the cake is really nice and chilled, and you can just pour it on top, and you can help it along either with your spoon, or you can just move it around here and then just let it fall where it falls. And then just like that, it'll drip, and it'll just give it the most elegant looking finish, and it'll look like you bought it from a beautiful fancy bakery. Look at that. Once this sets, then we're just going to add our finishing touches. So we're just going to give it about 10 minutes for this to set. Now, you can decorate this any which way you like. You can slice some fresh strawberries and put some blueberries and raspberries or any of your favorite berries on top. I'm going to make some little swirls with the rest of this buttercream. When you're doing that, you want to make sure that it sets a little bit more than mine is, because I can feel the ganache kind of still being it's still a little bit wet. But here we are. I'm going to be super duper careful and hope that these little rosettes don't slide off the cake. Here we are. Now, these little rosettes are very simple to make. They add another little extra special touch to the cake. Once it sets, you can just set some strawberries in between them or on top of them. Really, the sky's the limit, whatever you want to do. Now, ideally, you want this to set a few hours before you slice into it, but we're just going to go ahead and cut into it and hope it doesn't fall apart. So far, so good. Ta-da! Take a look at that, you guys. Who would not want to put this showstopper at the center of their table and pull it out for dessert? I mean, I'm telling you, everyone is going to be so surprised and they'll never believe that you made it. Can you tell that I can't wait to bite into this? This is just simply divine looking. The most moist chocolate cake. The layers, I can't even tell you how moist they are, how deep, rich, and chocolatey it is. The vanilla buttercream just balances it out because it's not too sweet. The ganache just really takes it up to that next level. So you guys, make sure you make this weekend. Make it for any special occasion, birthday, party, anniversary, a get-together just for no reason at all whatsoever. It freezes really well. If you don't eat it all, just cut it into slices, put it in a freezer container, and then take it out and enjoy it whenever you feel like having something rich and chocolatey. The recipe will be in the description box down below. Takes you to the website www.dimitrasdishes.com. Let me know what you think in the comment section. What other cakes would you like to learn how to make? Thank you for spending time with me today, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.